Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Samantha Guzman, and I am a paralegal with the Foreclosure Prevention Project with Lone Star Legal Aid. Before we get started on our Law Talk Live today, I do want to just let you know some disclaimers. This presentation is intended to serve as legal information and does not replace legal advice. Contact Lone Star Legal Aid at 1-800-733-8394 or go to www.lonestarlegal.org for more information on legal assistance. Lone Star Legal Aid does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, gender expression, sexual orientation, age, national origin, ancestry, disability, marital status, or military status in any of its activities or operations. I am going to let my colleague introduce himself before we start.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir Bafroui. I'm an attorney here with Lone Star Legal Aid in our foreclosure prevention project. Samantha and I are excited to speak to y'all today. Samantha's going to get it kicked off, but y'all will hear from me very, very soon.
Okay, so today on Law Talk Live Fridays, we're going to talk about Lone Star Legal Aid, but we're going to focus on ways you can lower your property taxes and do a deep dive into the Texas Homeowner Assistance Program, commonly referred to as Texas HAF. At Lone Star Legal Aid, we protect and advance the civil legal rights of the millions of Texans living in poverty. Lone Star Legal Aid serves 76 counties in the Gulf Coast region, plus 4 in Southwest Arkansas. We have 14 offices, in addition to our Houston headquarters, in Beaumont, Belton, Bryan, Clute, Conroe, Galveston, Longview, Nacogdoches, Paris, Richmond, Texarkana, Tyler, and Waco. There are over 2 million people at 125% of the poverty guidelines and who are eligible for our services. As of 2021, we have completed over 22,950 legal cases that have benefited more than 61,300 people. Again, if you do need a legal assistance, you can always apply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by visiting us at www.lonestarlegal.org. If you do not have access to the internet, you can always call us between business hours, Monday through Friday at 1-800-733-8394. Again, as I mentioned, we do have branch offices all over the Gulf Coast of Texas, including Beaumont, Conroe, Galveston, Belton, Bryan, Houston, Longview, Nacogdoches, Tyler, Paris, Richmond, Waco, and Texarkana. You can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, it's at Lone Star Legal Aid. Facebook, it's at Lone Star Legal Aid. On Twitter, it's at L-Star Legal. And on YouTube, follow us on YouTube at L-Star Legal. So I'm going to turn this over to Amir.
Thank you very much, Samantha. So everyone, I'm going to start sharing my screen right quick. Bear with me just a sec. All right. Bear with me 1 second. I got to get back to that slide. So today's presentation is about how you can lower your raw property tax bill by intervening or working yourself into an earlier part of the process, which is protesting the appraised value of your home and applying for homestead or other tax exemptions to lower the appraised value. Whole lot of bunch of big words. I'm going to break it down for y'all in a very hopefully easy to understand way. So before we get into too deep of a dive here, I want to talk about the 4 stages of the property, what leads to your property tax bill. So that has to do with valuing the taxable property and protesting the property taxes. Those are steps 1 and 2. That's what we're going to be doing a deep dive on later in the presentation. Steps 3 and 4 are where your local property taxing entities, think your area school district or the city or county that you live in, or, you know, emergency services districts that pay for the fire and what have you, setting their tax rates. Once they set their tax rates, the next step is sending you the bill and collecting. So here on the slide, we have a big overview of the process. It starts in January. Appraisal districts are required to appraise the property at its value on this date. So I said a couple of terms there I want to break out. What's an appraisal district? Well, every county that in Texas, all 254 of them, have either a county appraisal district or a central appraisal district. The difference in the name doesn't matter. They have two jobs. One job is to appraise or determine the value of every piece of property in the county every year, and they do that in January. The other job is to apply exemptions to those properties if homeowners or property owners apply for them. So the appraisal process, the process by which your central or county appraisal district sets the value, begins in January and really ends by the end of April 30th. So most property owners will get a notice from their central appraisal district, or CAD, somewhere in the spring, you know, late winter, early spring for us here in Texas, between January 1 and April 30th. Sometimes they come a little bit later, but in April and May, this next part on our circle here, the appraisal districts are sending those notices, and then in May and July, the appraisal districts are working through protests or ways where people say, I don't agree with the value that you set for my home. Those things are done throughout the summer. We're going to be talking about steps from April, May, June, and July in the protesting process. In August and September, so the end of summer, beginning of fall, you have your local taxing units, so the school districts, the cities, the counties, what have you, setting their tax rate. And once those tax rates are set, then what you have is in October, the tax bills generally are mailed out to property owners, homeowners, business owners who own the land where their business is located. So it shows that the point of this this slide here is to show that property taxes are a year-round process, and there's a very valuable role that every property owner, homeowner can play in the early stages of that process to really control or have a bigger say in how much they are paying in property taxes. So let's go into that deep dive that I promised. This is where we're going to learn more about the tax appraisal process and how that affects your property tax bill, and how to lower your property tax bill by getting involved in the tax appraisal process. So the words on this slide are a bit busy. I'm going to read all of them for anyone who may be visually challenged, and just anyone who's having trouble reading this, you know, on Facebook. Our first box at the top, we're talking about protesting the appraised value of your home. That's the title for this slide. The next thing is if the appraisal district appraises your property at a higher amount than the previous year, so 2022 to 2023, then the appraisal district is required to send you notice of appraisal. This is how much the CAD, the Central Appraisal District, thinks your house is worth as of January 1st, 2023, or January 1st of whatever year. And that notice needs to be mailed to you no later than May the 1st. Or if it's a homestead, if this is the house, the property where you live, it needs to be mailed out to you by April the 1st, or as soon as practical thereafter. The notice of appraised value has to include information on how to file a protest or disagree with the value that the CAD has set. And it has to explain the process by which you can resolve your disagreement. So if the county appraisal district says, we think your house is worth 300,000, and you say, no, I think it's worth 250, that whatever number that is, that ends up being, is going to affect your property tax bill in no small way. Now, if you're dissatisfied with the appraised value, you have a deadline by which you can file your protest or disagreement with the Central Appraisal District. In most cases, you have until May 15th. So here we are talking to you on June 2nd. May 15th was about 2-3 weeks ago. We're going to talk about extensions that people can get. The first extension is if you got your notice of appraised value from the CAD on May the 14th, you're not expected to file your protest by the deadline being the next day. Texas law gives you 30 days from the date that you received it in order to, be reasonable and give you the opportunity to decide whether you want to protest or disagree or not. Property owners don't have to do this themselves. In many areas in Houston where Sam and I are based, there are dozens of property tax consultants, private companies that will help you do this yourself. The way those tax consultants work, everyone works a little bit differently, but generally is if they save you any money on your taxes, they take a percentage of the amount that they save you. So most charge between 25 and 50%. So if they save you $100 on your tax bill, they're going to take $25 to $50 of that savings. So you still end up saving money and you paid someone to help you out for the convenience and the expertise of that tax consultant. After you file your protest, if you do it yourself, or if you want to know what your tax consultant is doing, you'll receive a written notice of the day, time, place, and what y'all are going to talk about for a formal hearing with the ARB. The ARB stands for Appraisal Review Board. Now, before you go to that Appraisal Review Board, you have the opportunity to ask for an informal conference with the appraisal district. So that's, again, the Central Appraisal District, or CAD, to try and resolve things. Informal conferences can be done online. They can be done over the phone. Harris County in the area where I live used to allow you to just come and sit next to one of the appraisal district staff in a cubicle, and y'all talk about it for 10-15 minutes. And if you get everything worked out, you're done. You don't have to go to your ARB hearing. But if you're not able to resolve things at the informal hearing, or you don't want to go to the informal conference, you now have the opportunity to go to the formal hearing. And at the formal hearing, the Appraisal Review Board, or ARB, listens to both you, the taxpayer, and someone who's there for the chief appraisal. So chief appraiser. So that's the county appraisal district's employee. Y'all can discuss your objections about the property value. I don't think my property is worth X. I think it's worth Y. You can talk about exemptions or anything else that you're choosing to protest. Ultimately, the ARB will make a decision, and it's binding only on that tax year. So let me make this a little less hypothetical. If, here we are in June of 2023, I, as a homeowner, got my property tax appraisal value sometime in April. I timely filed my notice of protest with the Harris County Appraisal District before May 15th. That's I got it in April. I beat the deadline of May 15th. Once my ARB hearing is set up, I'm going to have to go there and explain why I disagree and provide proof of why I disagree with the Harris County Appraisal District's decision to change the value of my home. We're going to go into this a little bit more detail further on. Now, I just went through an example of me meeting the May 15th deadline. Well, what happens if you miss the protest deadline? So earlier I mentioned that the deadline is May 15th or 30 days after you receive notice. So if you get notice on May the 14th, you got 30 days, basically till June 13th, because there's 31 days in May to get your protest filed. But what if you miss that deadline? So I'm going to read to y'all a section of the property tax code which sets an exception to the deadline. Texas Property Tax Code 41.44 subsection B, that's for all the lawyers out there, provides that a property owner who files his notice of protest after the deadline prescribed by subsection A, so that's where they set May 15th or 30 days after receiving notice, but before the Appraisal Review Board approves the appraisal records, is entitled to a hearing and a determination of the protest if he shows good cause as determined by the board for failure to meet the deadline. So what does all that mean? So we talked about that big circle earlier in the presentation where I showed that from January to basically May is when the notices of protest or notice of appraised value are going out. And in May, June, and July are where protests are being handled. And then in August and September is where the tax rates are set. The tax rates are set at the same time that the county appraisal district, the CAD, sets its appraisal rules. They say all the property in Harris County or all the property in whatever county you live in has been set. We're done with all the protests. Once that's set, then the tax rates can get set. So how does this tie into the deadline? This essentially says if you could show a good reason for missing the deadline, you basically have until the end of July to file your notice of protest. So let's talk about some good reasons. I looked and I looked and I looked, and no one puts it in clear black and white language on what is a good reason. And the reason is good reasons vary, right? It depends on the person and the situation. Here's what the Texas Comptroller says. The Texas Comptroller controls and puts out guidance for all 254 of the county appraisal districts across the state. The Texas Comptroller's model hearing procedures for ARBs, appraisal review boards, provides that good cause for filing late protest is not defined in Texas Tax Code 41.44B. So that's the section, that's the law we just talked about. Claims of good cause for late filed protest must be carefully considered. That means everyone's situation is different. The standard in making determinations of good cause under Texas Tax Code 41.44B must be uniformly applied. It means everyone's held to the same standard. Everyone might have different reasons, but we need to make sure the standard is not discriminatory. The ARB, or Appraisal Review Board, should give due consideration to good cause claims in a manner that properly respects the rights of the property owner and their agents, while not undermining or contravening laws related to filing deadlines or the orderly and expeditious fulfillment of ARB duties. So do I have a good reason yet? I'm not sure. A lot of the good reasons that I was able to find in lawsuits against county appraisal districts vary. I had to hire someone to value my property, and it took a long time, so that's why I missed it. Or I'm a first-time home buyer and I missed the notice because it just got mailed out. That's a good reason. I share those examples to say that good reasons vary depending on the person. If you've missed the May 15th deadline to protest, think about why. And if it's just because you didn't know, that might be a good enough reason if you can explain you didn't know. And I encourage everyone who owns their home or property to protest, or at least talk to someone about protesting your property tax appraisal so that you can get a better handle on the tax bill that will impact you and possibly your mortgage. So we've talked about, I've teased a couple of times the ARB hearing. This is where you're sitting down and you're sitting down in a conference room. On one side of the desk is you. On the other side of the desk is a representative from the Central Appraisal District saying, we think your house is worth a certain number. And at the other side of the room, in the conference room, are generally 3 people who represent the Appraisal Review Board. So what should you expect? You should expect to bring proof to support your position, because the Central Appraisal District is going to bring proof to show that their number is an accurate number. So I'm going to read this slide again. The wording's a little small, but I want to make sure those of you who are tuning in who may be visually impaired are able to get this information as well. You can't go to the hearing and just say, the appraisal district is wrong, I win. That ain't going to work. You should gather all information about your property that may be relevant in considering the true value of your home, such as pictures of your house and houses down the street, comparable properties, receipts or estimates for repairs. So if the roof needs to be replaced, get an estimate. Most roofers will climb on your roof and tell you it needs to be fixed and tell you how much it'll cost. If you got foundation problems, do the same thing. If the windows are old, get an estimate for those. These are all different ways to show that the Central Appraisal District might value your house at a certain number based on your neighborhood, but only you know the true value of your home because you live there and you see both, all the great things about your home and all the warts that we just choose to live with. If you can get estimates to support your position, you are that much stronger when you're making your argument. Part of the hearing involves evidence, and another part involves arguing your case. Arguing means presenting your case by clear and concise presentation. So this is where you're saying, the appraisal district thinks my house is worth $300,000. I think it's worth $250,000. I think it's worth $250,000 because the foundation's broken. Here are pictures showing the cracks in the wall and the doors that won't shut. And and here's an estimate from Olshan Foundation Repair or whatever foundation company you choose, saying it's going to cost $25,000 and my foundation does need to be fixed. Here are pictures of the roof. The shingles are missing or broken. You can see the plywood on the roof. You can see, some of the carpet that covers the plywood. And here's an estimate from a roofing company that says that repair is going to cost $10,000. Here are pictures of my windows. They are from 1956 when my house was built. Here's an estimate from whatever window company saying it's going to cost $15,000. You can see how just take your proof and tie it back to your position, right? I think my house is worth 250, and here's how I got to that number. While the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board, can consider the effect of general economic and environmental factors may have on your property, it cannot take into account your personal economic situation. What does that mean? That means if your property is flooded, or if you were in a neighborhood that flooded, or if a lot of homes in your neighborhood are abandoned because a lot of foreclosures happened or people are just moving out, those can be considered ways to lower your property value. But just saying I've lost my job, or there were some unfortunate circumstances that have impacted my finances, those things cannot support protesting the appraised value of your home. And the amount of time allotted for an ARB hearing is typically 15 minutes. If you need more time, make sure you ask for it. When you're going to an Appraisal Review Board hearing, plan to be there for about 2 hours. You're not gonna, if your time slot was at 3 o'clock and you show up at 2:45, they're not gonna call you at 3 o'clock. You might be waiting on the homeowners or property owners in front of you. Again, a good estimate from my experience and my colleagues' experiences is you're going to spend about 2 hours in their offices. So we just talked about protesting your tax value. So that is lowering the value so that the tax rate that gets multiplied against that value to figure out your tax bill is as low as possible. Let's talk about tax exemptions. What an exemption is it literally takes whatever the appraised value of your home, let's say it's 250, you apply the exemption and it gets to cut out a chunk of that to say, no, tax me at this lower amount because a certain portion of that is exempt. Let me explain. The most popular exemption in Texas is the homestead exemption. And right now that's $40,000. So if I have a house the Harris County Appraisal District says is worth 300, I protest it down to 250. We come to an agreement, 250 is the number. And then I have a homestead exemption. The taxable value of my house is not 300. It ain't 250. It's now 210. And you can see how that, when you multiply it times whatever the tax rate that gets set later that year, can save you a substantial amount of money. I ain't going to do the math for you. There's a reason I'm a lawyer and not an accountant, but these are important things to think about when you're trying to figure out, how can I keep my home affordable? Property taxes have been increasing across the state because property values have been increasing across the state. Protesting your taxes and filing for the exemptions that you're entitled to are the two most powerful ways to control property tax bills that are impacting you as the homeowner. Now, to qualify for a homestead exemption, the most popular exemption, you must be an individual, a person, not a corporation, that uses the home as his or her principal residence, and you got to apply for it. Unfortunately, the way Texas law is right now is you don't just get a homestead exemption when you buy your house. You do have to apply for it. It's not difficult and it's free to apply for, but knowledge is power. I encourage every single one of you out there that owns your home, check to make sure that you have a homestead exemption, and if you don't, apply for it ASAP. But wait, there's more. The homestead exemption is not the only exemption that you might be entitled to. People who are over age 65 or 65 years or older, or who are considered legally disabled, so receiving disability benefits from maybe an insurance policy or the Social Security Administration, can qualify for an additional tax exemption. Now, One nice thing about the over 65 person exemption is you don't get it on the day that you turn 65. You get it as of the year that you turn 65. So if your birthday is in October, like mine, and you turn 65 in 2023, you can apply for the exemption in January and you get the benefit for the full 12 months rather than having to wait until October. Here's an example of what the residence homestead exemption application looks like. If you remember nothing else from this slide, remember Form 50-114. If you just Google that, it will take you to the Texas Comptroller's website where you can find this form to what? Submit that homestead exemption application to make sure you're lowering your appraised value. Now, if you live in a home that has multiple owners, can you qualify for a residence homestead exemption on the home? The answer is yes. How much of that do you get? Do you get 100% of the homestead exemption if you only own a third? It depends. If you inherited the property, there is a way where you can get 100% of the homestead exemption in your name, even if you only own, as little as 1/3 or even smaller. If you're married, both spouses are treated as if they jointly own the property generally, and will get 100% exemption for either spouse. If you were gifted the property rather than inheriting it, your exemption is going to be limited to the amount of your gift. So if mom gifted you half of the house and she still lives there and owns the other half of the house, well, you get 50% of the homestead exemption and she gets 50% of whatever exemption she's entitled to. Those partial ownership situations are the ones that are a little bit trickier. I encourage you to touch base with Lone Star Legal Aid or talk to your county appraisal district to see exactly what percentage of your exemption that you're entitled to. So what's the deadline for filing the residence homestead exemption? So to complete the application and get it filed by April 30th of the tax year that you're applying for. However, for the over 65 person exemption or disabled person exemption, you can actually apply for it late and you can get it applied retroactively for up to 2 years. There's certain deadlines that you have to be met that need to be met. Generally, it's February 1st because that's the date on which property taxes become delinquent. So let me take a step back from that. If I haven't filed for my over 65 person exemption and I filed for it as of February 1st, 2024, so that's the next year that taxes are going to become delinquent, I can get it retroactively applied to 2023 and 2022, going back those 2 years. It's a powerful tool for people who are in their more senior years or maybe disabled, both of which those folks might be on a fixed income and need all the help they can to manage their property taxes. It's a powerful tool that you can utilize, homeowners can utilize to better manage their property tax bills. Can I get both an over 65 person exemption and a disabled person exemption? No, you can't, because they do the exact same thing. They offer the same benefit. What if you're over 65, but you're also disabled and medically incapable of working? Sorry, but you only get one exemption or the other. There's really no benefit to the either or because you're entitled to the same exact benefit. So now I'm going to turn it over back to Sam for her to talk about the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. This is a program that it is great to help those of you who may be behind on your property taxes get current on them as soon as possible. So let me stop my share. Oops. All right, Sam, it's all yours.
Unmute myself. Again, we're going to talk about the Texas Homeowner Assistance Fund. It is a new program in the state of Texas, well, all of the United States of America, but in Texas, we call it the Texas Homeowner Assistance Program. The purpose of the program is to provide financial assistance to qualified homeowners who have fallen behind on their mortgages and related expenses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The application portal opened March 2nd, 2022. You must meet some income eligibility and other requirements. They do offer up to $65,000 in mortgage and property charges assistance. What are property charges? So those can be anywhere from property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, your HOA fees, COA fees, and currently they opened it up to property tax loans as well. They also do offer up to $10,000 in utility payment assistance. The total benefit per homeowner cannot exceed the $65,000 caps. And certain dollar amounts, dollar amounts are subject to certain caps and restrictions. You can find more information at their website at www.texashomeownerassistance.com or call their number at 1-833-651-3874, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can also contact us at Lone Star Legal Aid for more information and for assistance to submit an application to the program. So when you do go to their webpage, this is what it will look like. They do have resources that if you may need, and also a resource to find help that's local to you. It does have their 1-833 number at the bottom. And you can apply online on your own, or again, as I mentioned, contact us and we'll be more than happy to assist you with that. So eligibility criteria, you have to be behind on one or more of the following payments: your mortgage loans, property taxes, property insurance, again, HOA, COA fees, and they haven't updated it to reflect property loan taxes. You have to have a household income at or below 100% of the area median income or 100% of the median income for the United States, whichever is greater. And you do have to own and occupy your home in Texas as your primary residence. And you have to have experienced a financial hardship after January 21st, 2020, such as lost income or increased expenses due to the pandemic. And Amir does like to say, one of the criteria is, he likes to say everybody bought a mask at the beginning of COVID. You know, that would qualify you as well. So they do have a mortgage program, as I had mentioned. They provide assistance to eligible Texas homeowners with, their hardships to pay your past due mortgages. And in some cases, they do pay up to 3 months of future mortgage payments, including eligible amounts advanced by a mortgage servicer. But again, the maximum assistance for this whole program is $65,000 per household. As I mentioned before, property charges, they do have that program. Again, that is also included in the $65,000 per household. And the utility payment program, they do offer if you're past due on your light bill, your water bill, your trash bill, your gas bill, up to $10,000 in assistance, but that is also included in your $65,000 per household. Now, I do know that at Lone Star Legal Aid, we do serve our low-income residents of Texas, but with the Texas Homeowner Assistance Program, we do have a little bit of leeway. These are their income requirements for the program. So for a household of 4, you can earn up to $90,000 per year. This is totally different from Lone Star Legal Aid's income requirements. So don't feel as if you won't if you don't traditionally qualify for our services. We are still able to help you if you live in one of these 10 counties: Brazoria, Chambers, Galveston, Hardin, Harris, Jefferson, Liberty, Matagorda, Orange, and Warden. Now, with that being said, the program is not limited to these 10 counties, but Lone Star Legal Aid is working specifically in these counties. So if you don't live in one of these counties and you do not qualify for our services, you can still go to www.texashomeownerassistance.com and apply on your own, and they may be able to help you. How the application process works. So they do your pre-eligibility check. Again, are you past due? Do you own your home? And whatnot. Then you complete your application. You can do it with our assistance or on your own. And then once we do that, the review process begins. And what they do is they make sure that you've submitted everything that you're required to submit before they begin the initial eligibility review. Once they start that review, then they will confirm your loan and or property expense information with your servicer or your HOA or your utility companies. After that, we're on step 6. They will do the final eligibility review. And then if you're approved, they will submit for payment, and the payment goes directly to whomever it is that is owed the money. So the payment does not go to you, it goes directly to them. So your application and what to expect. You must submit an application through the online portal, or if you don't have access, you can call them and do one over the phone. The resources are available to assist. Like I said, you can call the 1-833-651-3874, and there are people there that will help you through the application process. Applications are reviewed to determine whether the homeowner qualifies for the program assistance, and you can always check your status of your application by logging on to the Texas HAP portal, and it'll give you updates. Payments are sent directly to the mortgage servicer or property charge payee. You will need an identification card like a driver's license. It does not need to be current, so we don't need to panic about that. It can be expired. Past due mortgage statements, your property tax statements, insurance statements, and or HOA, COA statements. And those do have to be dated within 45 days prior to submission. So if I submit an application today, I need to have a bill not within 45 days of my application. You do need proof of occupancy like a utility bill and income documentation like pay stubs for everyone in your home. But if you are self-employed, they do have an income attestation that you can fill out and submit in lieu of pay stubs. And that is all. We do have questions, but again, the Texas HAP program, there's money there to help homeowners who are struggling right now. We do want to keep you in your homes. The government wants to keep you in your homes. Reach out to us if you need assistance.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, Sam. Thank you so much for taking us through that very valuable program. And I just want to circle back to some of the material that I was talking about in terms of protesting your property taxes. As I mentioned in the middle of the presentation, the guidelines from the Texas Comptroller are required to require central appraisal districts to apply their rules evenly and uniformly. So there cannot be any discrimination based on race, sex, national origin, any of the protected classes. So for any of y'all who are out there protesting your property taxes alone, I'd encourage you to look at the records from the Central Appraisal District to see what the value has been doing. Ask for the records from your Central Appraisal District so you're prepared for what they are relying on to say that their number for your appraised value is correct. And then look at your own evidence to make sure that it's as persuasive as possible. Now, I can speak as a homeowner who's done this myself and as a homeowner who's hired a tax consultant myself as well. It can be very frustrating when you don't get the result on your own. As a lawyer, reading the rules, gathering my evidence, doing all the things that I've suggested y'all do. My first protest hearing did not go the way I thought it would. It felt like I was talking to a room of people who had already made up their minds. And that can come through, right? It can be disappointing to not get the decision that you want. But that's where I encourage you to potentially talk to a private property tax consultant, because the next year I hired one and they got a significantly better result than I did. And they used almost the exact same evidence that I did. So there's resources out there to be able to help manage this, because, time is precious. Time is the one thing we can't get more of. If you don't have time to handle this on your own, I encourage you to talk to, the private companies that are out there. And remember, I'm not here to be a shill for them, but if you do choose to hire a private tax consultant, you don't pay them unless they achieve tax bill reduction for you. Were there any other questions in the chat, either on Facebook?
I don't think so.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any more. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, and I encourage y'all, this video is up there for posterity. Please share it with any friends or family members who weren't able to watch live so they can get this valuable and trusted information. Samantha and I do this all day, every day, along with other real estate matters for our Texas clients. So we're here on behalf of Lone Star Legal Aid to let you know this is trusted, verified legal information that applies to all property owners in the state of Texas. Take care and have a great day. Bye, y'all.